I am also going to try to not cry today. I have such gratitude for every aspect of the HC program. The fact that this program values me more than my academic achievements even at times is incredible. And where else would that happen except for here? And what's interesting about that is that we can achieve so much more when first we are cared about as people and seen as individuals. And so now I'm crying right away. And I can't tell you how much I value that, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate feeling finally my intelligence and my value as a person with 5 concussions, okay? I am going to open with something a little bit different. First of all, I need to share that I'm purple for a significant reason. Somebody asked me to come to an event today of the children of people who are in our armed services to celebrate and help support the kids with the kinds of trauma they go through. And I couldn't be there today, and so the woman said it's called Purple Day, and she said, could you wear purple at your event? And so I'm wearing purple in honor of children, which I think is appropriate because I love to serve youth. I am all about empowering youth with empathy to spring into compassionate action. I want to start with a poem that I wrote that was inspired by the trip to Africa that is within the book, the trip to stay with the Barbag tribe, and the poem goes like this. We go through life quite a while, logging many an emotional mile, before it becomes clear the beauty of life has always been here. We had been too consumed to see the simplicity and the beauty to simply be. There was so much value for me when I went to Africa to see how people had a gratitude just for being alive, and I've never been the same, and that's what inspired the book. I'm going to back up for another second and read one other thing before I talk about what happened 2 days ago. This came to me just recently, and I had to read this to you. I am all about diversity. I am all about that we are one human family. It is the mission of what I'm about. I'm very deeply troubled by racism and bullying and violence, as we all are. And when I read this, it jumped out at me, and I had no plan in sharing this at all until a day ago. So I want to share this. What most of us never realized, but persons of color have always known, is that the U.S. economy is far more similar to a game of chutes and ladders than Monopoly. It has long been a place where one's personal strategy for success and wealth building mattered far less than circumstance, or even the lucky or unlucky roll of the proverbial dice. One could begin to move up, climbing the ladder of the intergenerational advance, only to land on a downward slide that could, and often did, send you and your children back to the metaphorical beginning. For us, the game was always upward and onward, ladders without chutes. But for everyone else, the chutes predominated and were to be found around every turn. Coming to terms with the reality, a reality about which persons of color have long been aware, can't be easy. As a person of white privilege, I was just so struck by reading that, and I had to share this. And it's really sort of a big part of what, as I said, I'm all about. I've grown so much in that way and in so many ways. In the beginning, it was so hard for me to lead people. That was one of my areas of growth, where I would be either too easy or too demanding. I would expect people to just, do something when I needed to because I'm so crazy and driven in how I do things. And so the growth that I think I've experienced in managing now 8 interns has been pretty tremendous, and Lee's been a really wonderful supporter of that. And I can't say enough again about the kinds of support that I've had. First, I wanted to let you all be aware of the fact that when I talk about team empathy, this book would not have taken place if it weren't for mentors, interns, my students, my friends, my family. It wouldn't happen. I am really only the sum of my parts. And the reason that it's so beautiful and stunning is that young people responded to the messages of empowering youth with empathy. And that's what's so fantastic about the whole experience for me. And I want you just a second with me to peek at these images here. These are some of the early drawings that were done by high school age kids at Purpose Center for the Arts. So this book is created by high school age youth, which is fantastic, isn't it? Because they sprung into compassionate action, responding to what the need was in the world, and then that's how the book was created. And that's how I was held up too. I'm only one little person. I can't do this at all. But I can do it with all of us being part of making a change in the world. And so I want to honor everybody. I want to honor and make sure everybody understands that anything that has happened is as a result of that wide range of people supporting this work, okay? The book signings, the Barnes & Noble book signings, I think I had 23 signings this last year. 11 were Barnes & Noble. Many were sold out, totally humbling to me. But the reason they sold out, it wasn't me. It was because the messages are important. People responded to the messages. And I made sure that I didn't make it about me. When I set up the signings had the beautiful cloths that the Barnett Tribe wore. I brought the family sign. I brought the gourd that was used to get water from the earth dam that women now had, so that the girls could go to school. Before that, as you learned in the video, the girls couldn't go to school because that was their job. So all of those things kind of helped create community. And so when people came to the signing, they could feel from me that this is your book too. Just like it's the intern's book, it's my mentor's book, it's my advisor's book, it's the program's book. It was anybody who came to that table's book too, because we all love our children. We all want this world to be positive and wonderful. And so I wanted people to feel and really embrace that with me. And I think that's how the success has happened in those ways. And so I wanted to share that and make sure that that is just punctuated and really firmly planted. I just want you to know that. Okay, so I will now have the courage to share this. On Tuesday of this week, I had been subbing for 2 weeks in a 5th grade classroom. Really tough, beautiful population, very large Somali population, but kids who needed a lot of direction. Wonderful kids, wonderful school. I love the school. They hired me to do readings, and they bought a whole box of books. So I have sort of an affinity for the school for many reasons, okay? Because I love who they are, and they embraced the book, and they felt the book would give kids an example of who they were a little bit. It's Eastern Africa, like Somalia, okay? So I was feeling my brain waning with the 5 concussions. I could tell I was having some pre-seizure kinds of things happening. And I said to the principal, I said, I've had a migraine for 4 days, and I said, I'm just not strong enough. And I said, I think Wednesday will have to be my last day, okay? And yet, boy, I was trying. And then Tuesday night, I had a seizure, and I haven't had a seizure in a couple of years. And what's interesting is that on my journey, and I'll say this, journey in the HD program is more wonderful and more difficult, and the same thing with the literary world than I would have imagined. At the same time, they were more difficult but more special than I could have imagined. And so it's crazy and interesting, and it's almost appropriate that I had the seizure before this presentation. It's interesting that I didn't have it when I was on tour. I sold everything I owned to launch this book. I didn't have enough money. I had a 5th concussion while I was in this program, and all of a sudden, I had to figure out, how do I get this book out? How do I keep serving with this book? How do I keep on being a grad student? Where in the world else could I be a grad student, but in the HD program, with the independent learning that I could do, and still map, and still stay on track? I mean, I'm so grateful I can't even put it into words. So it surprises me that as I was on the road, staying with friends and family, sleeping on cushions on my mom's floor because she had a 1-bedroom apartment, when I'm serving my world and driving to these book signings where I'd get there and I'd have a migraine, I'm not kidding, for 2 days straight afterwards, because the motion of the car was so hard on me. Okay, so when I was dealing with all of those challenges, no seizure, right? And then a few days before this, it happens. But I've had the privilege just recently of being accepted into something called Innovate ND, and it's a business incubator that sees the value of my business, but not just the books part of my business. And so I'll just share that quickly now. I also envision using the character to help teach about empathy and shared humanity, and that we are one human family, and offer a nonviolent character so that kids can have that in a variety of technology and media forms. I want him everywhere, and I want the characters that I create everywhere, not out of ego, but because I want kids to know that there's more positive and there's more good in the world than there is negative. And I feel like they were being fed the opposite. So going back again to the seizure and sort of the vulnerability, it's so appropriate in a way that I'm reminded of how I was able to get through this program with a 5th concussion, having to sell everything, having to stay on track, but stay on track with the love and support of my program, and to be continually given a message that you are bright and you are worthy. Because when you have a brain injury and you have more than one, you don't feel that. It's very invisible. I love Kim said when I walked in, she goes, "You'd never know," and I go, "I know." And I said, what's interesting is that the brain injuries are very invisible, but yet the cheetah, boy, the cheetah just calls me out. I've set out to write a book about empathy, shared humanity, that we are one human family. I wasn't writing a book about me, but when we write from what we know. And I wrote a character I didn't even know was me. And it was a superintendent friend of mine who said to me, he said, "Wendy, you're the cheetah." And I was horrified at first because I thought, dear God, no, I'm serving, I'm giving, I'm the kind of person who doesn't even want to do a memoir because I'm deeply personal that way, and I don't want, that kind of thing. I just don't want to talk about it a whole bunch. So that's why it took me so long to start saying this. But as he said that to me, I had to take personal inventory and admit that he was right. And what's interesting is that when that happened, when I admitted that in the front of the book, I dedicated in part to other people with brain injury, to give people hope to persevere. And then this is a beautiful story that happened when I was on the book tour thing that I created that somehow happened. I was in Idaho, and I had just done a Barnes & Noble book signing. And I was talking to a Wendy's worker. I'm always talking about my book and trying to encourage people to understand the need for empathy. And I said, you know what? I said, there's some extra signed copies left next door if you wanted to have one, if you have children. And she said, what's your book? And I showed her the image on my phone, and she said, that's my child's favorite book. And I'm like, no. I said, are you serious? And I said, where did you get it? And she goes, Walmart. I didn't even know Walmart sold the book, right? Okay, but here's the most beautiful part. So I'm already tearing up when she just says it's her child's favorite book, just because her child likes it, right? And I think, how special is that, of all the people I talk to? She says to me, she says, my child, Wendy, is severely autistic, and he has no friends. And she said, this book is so important to him. He has me read it every night to him. So as I was afraid of letting my world know about my vulnerabilities, here, without knowing it, those messages, those sort of organic messages that just happened that I didn't intend, help that child. And so things that I didn't even know were going to happen are happening, that are reminding me of the beauty and the power of words, and the power of all of us with social justice, with serving our world, with getting out there and doing the kinds of things that we are all doing in this room. And it's such a beautiful honor to be a part of a community like this where we get to do this, and we are energized and given strength so that we can keep going out and doing what all of us are doing. And I'm so proud of all of us for this. So yes, so how appropriate, right, that I had a seizure and had to be humbled by that, because it's terribly humbling. My boyfriend's little girls had to see what it looks like when I can't speak and I can't open my eyes. I felt very guilty about people having to see that part. I kept staying downstairs that day because I could feel my brain just not wiring right. And yet, and then I had all these plans to have this elaborate, presentation because I'm type A, and I'm gonna do everything perfect. And so I planned it ahead of time too. I go, I'm stopping on Wednesday so the seizure doesn't happen, and then it won't, and then it did. So then I had to regroup, and I had to decide, what's more important? Is it more important for me to be able to speak intelligently when I'm here, right? And have you be able to even understand what I'm saying so that I can process? Or is it important for me to push through and make sure that I'm doing, the type A kinds of stuff to make sure that it all looks perfect? And then I would have come in here and just fallen on my face and done a terrible job. So it felt more important again to be a person first. Sort of the same thing that my work is all about. It's all about trying to encourage empathy, connection, community, love, support, right? Because it's not happening. I wanted to remind you that, did you hear in the intro that when one child cries, that's the love song to mankind. And that love song to mankind was recorded by one of my other interns. He's an IPR. Now he's a graduate. Got to go to his graduation. I got invited by his family to this really cool gathering, and so proud of him. So that song is, I found a way to put it in the second book. So that love song to mankind is part of the second book.